This market has been shitty for 2 years, period. It is a buyer's market. It is not a seller's market. If you are a hiring manager, select for grit. In tough markets, not a time for prima donnas that are just goal scorers when the wind is at their back. You need 200-foot players that will play offense, defense, be good teammates, will roll their sleeves up, will stop if they see a piece of trash in their community and pick it up, will do the extra things. Grit will get you a long way.
You're listening to Let Me Speak to a Manager with Frank Cava and Ian Matthews.
What a crock of shit.
Yeah, that was hot mic, Sam.
It's 30 minutes away. I'll be there in 10.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Hanky!
Ian, you son of a bee. I feel I still can't curse after my after being chastised by two people from the Bible Belt about my my comment with ladies of the night and appendages on men.
Sure was popular though. I must have got 10 text messages with your quote very direct.
My listener group is a little bit more jaded.
It better be known for something, right? Even negative press is press. You gotta get the press however you can, Frank. I think you should keep doing it. I think you should keep saying really dirty, nasty crap on here, and it'll get more people forwarding it along, I guess.
Lean into it.
I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, our deep following of Let Me Speak to a Manager podcast, this is an exciting episode for me because for like I've been friends with Frankie for 20 years, my Florida pal, and I can't remember him ever talking about hockey with me, ever, not even once. And so now having the USA winning both the women's and the men's gold, it's been very exciting. Frank's even writing about it, or at least having his AI bot write for him. But
I wrote every word of that article. Every word.
Seemed a little too polished.
They will edit. They do my editing. That is all. I wrote every fucking.
I don't know.
I did have 2 typos in it, even after fucking 9. Oops. After 9 drafts.
Skeptical. I'm a little skeptical.
Fair.
So we want to talk today. We want to talk about the way this hockey team, this men's USA hockey team was put together. So the women won, but women's hockey is very strong now in America. They were expected to win. They have the better team. Women's hockey has really taken off in college. So they came into this having beaten Canada 5 or 6 times. So it wasn't a big surprise that they beat Canada. Now, Canada's really good in women's hockey, but for the men, the Canadian hockey team for the men is outrageous. It is just chock full of future Hall of Fame, which is not surprising. Anyone that watches hockey knows that that's where it was invented. Canadians are just badass at hockey. That is their sport, but it's become more of an international game, not quite like basketball. Well, maybe like basketball. It's probably close, but the Americans have just been steadily getting better at hockey. As you look at every roster in the NHL, there are more and more Americans on the team. When I was a kid growing up in the 80s, there were like 5 Americans on teams. It was like nothing. It was like a big deal that Mike Modano was from America and he was an all-star. You certainly didn't see many all-stars. And so you're seeing more of a level playing field today, but still, even with that, it's dramatically. If you were to take in this game, the Americans versus the Canadians, of the best 10 players, it's probably 8 Canadians, 2 Americans, our goalie and Austin Matthews.
So it's really interesting if you look at this. So I'm going to do men first. I'll go to the ladies second. So if you go men first, in America, American football, tackle football, is an inner city kind of a thing. Now, your quarterbacks usually come from different parts of the world, but most of the people who are there, like your offensive linemen, your defensive linemen, your DBs, the skill positions usually come from very urban areas and working class, or stated differently, poor neighborhoods. In Canada, football is a club sport. You have to have a lot of money, and it's kind of your private schools who play in those sports. And if you look at it in America, if you flip it to hockey, in Canada, it's their national sport. It's similar to football for us. It's working class. Everybody plays it, and it's really something that's really prominent in kind of the middle and lower class neighborhoods because it's a really cheap thing to do. There's ice, it's prominent. You need a stick and you need a little puck. Like for $9, anybody can play it. So
I gotta just stop you there because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. That is very far from the costs of hockey.
Sure.
Even in Canada. So a couple of things. You're right. It is slightly cheaper in Canada. It is still one of the most expensive sports on the planet. There is no way inner city kids are playing hockey in Canada. There is a reason why you don't see many African Americans. You don't see many. There's a reason for that. There's a lot of money in hockey, even with the Canadians. Now, what I will say is one thing you're saying is partially right. Supply and demand in Canada in Canada, the number of ice rinks per capita is obnoxiously higher than in America. Similar, like if you drive through Indiana, you can't blink without seeing a basketball court somewhere. Like Indiana's the cradle of basketball, sort of for a reason. They're crazy about the sport. There's basketball courts and marinas everywhere. I live in Northern Virginia. Canada's starting to be more popular. I have a good friend who's plays hockey. There's like 2 rinks. It's like I got to drive if I live in Vienna, I got to drive 30 minutes to Reston, or I got to drive 30 minutes to Arlington, or 40 minutes to Ashburn. There's like 3. That's it. And so in Virginia, you have to have money to play hockey because there's only 3 rinks and they can charge up for the ice time. But in places like Canada, where I grew up in Trenton, Michigan, there were, I could swing a driver and hit a golf ball to like 5 different, like there were just rinks everywhere. I never had to drive farther than 20 minutes to play great competitive hockey. And so even someone like me that had a steelworker dad, I didn't have a lot of money to play like a really expensive sport. I could still play it. But if my dad were on this call and he were listening to you saying, "Oh, kind of cheap, you just buy a stick," he'd be like, "You know how many sticks my son broke in a month?" You're like, it's an expensive. You have to sharpen the skates.
All right. You're going into this. This is a 30-minute episode. We're going to spend half an hour.
No, I'm not letting you get away with that. You were just factually so off with your Florida bullshit you were spitting.
So the Hughes brothers, there's 3 Hughes brothers. You know where they were born?
They were born in Florida, but they grew up in Michigan playing hockey.
Orlando, because they have money because their mom was like on the national team. My
They
point
played in
is,
Michigan.
they all played at Michigan, University of. But the point is, there's not a lot of Canadian football players, and there's not usually a lot of American hockey players for the similar reasons. It's harder to get access to, and it's something that is incredibly rare. But pivoting away from the demographics of it,
do you have something true to tell our listeners? Do you have something like that's a fact?
Everything I said is fact. It's down to demographics that you disagree with. All right, take over. Go. Run point.
So let's hear the second point that you're going to get wrong about hockey.
So the thing I'm not going to get wrong about hockey is this. We've won 3 gold medals. We can't call it Squaw Valley anymore. It's an area outside of Tahoe. We won at Squaw Valley. This is factual.
Oh, wait, we're the most unwoke podcast ever. Call it Squaw Valley.
They don't call it that anymore. It's called Palisades, which is BS. But they weren't hosted at Palisades. They're hosted at Squaw Valley. If you want to make the Indians happy, don't change the name.
Golden land, you sons of bitches. All we got is casinos left.
So we won at Squaw Valley in 60. We won at 80 in Lake Placid at the Miracle on Ice. And then we won this year. So 46 years later. So it's a rare type of a feat in an event. What's really cool about this win, though, is this is the era of the teams from the 1980s where it's a bunch of students or young kids playing against the Eastern Bloc. If you know anything about the 1980 team, we won in 60, we won in 80. In 64, 68, 72, and 76, the U.S. lost and got decimated by the USSR and basically everything in the Soviet bloc because they had all these guys who were professional hockey players who were enlisted in the military. It was basically a loophole. So we had 22-year-olds playing against 35-year-olds that were incredibly skilled. Those teams literally played up against the NHL All-Stars, and beat them. They were that good. So it's flipped. Now the story of these unheralded people is over and we have pros playing, but it meant something to these pros if they were inner city or not, because they bargained for it in their collective bargaining agreement because they wanted to play and it meant something. And I thought that was really, really cool. The quality is way up, and the quality is way up because these are pros who wanted to play this sport.
I love that. And I think there's a parallel with the Dream Team in 1992.
Yes.
Those NBA players fought for that.
Yes.
And the reason why they fought for that is we lost.
We lost.
They didn't like that. They didn't like Russia saying that they were the best basketball country in the world. They thought that was obnoxious. That maybe a different era than today's NBA, but that group of players absolutely wanted to go win a gold medal and were willing to get injured to do it. So I think there's some parallels of the two.
100%. And if you look at it, 72 we lost to the USSR in basketball, and it was a BS call is the reason we lost. And the people who were on that 72 Olympic team and won silver for the U.S. men's basketball team, nearly all of them did not accept their medals. They were still pissed about it. But we started to lose a lot. And it was like, wait a minute, there's all these loopholes for these countries getting in. That was the precedent to this, is the basketball team, but it's changed the dynamic of it, but the quality has gone up. It's getting better ratings. And what I think is fascinating is it's sports, but we talk here about current events, we talk about sports, we talk about business. The construction of the team is something we're going to get into, and how, as the U.S., we had to look at things differently. One of the things I love to look at right now.
Was it a precedent or a precedent? Should we put that in the show notes?
Precedent, no. Precedent is something that happens before. You're the language guy. Let me get my wife. Let me have her. Precedent is the right word.
I don't want to go head down with Ellie. Let's not get her.
No.
Don't bring her in here on this.
Go into your
three
go
languages.
Go.
Well, let's just start with, pretty safe to assume that Canada is the incumbent.
Yes.
They are the monopoly. They had a monopoly on hockey. Most of my time growing up, the Canadians had the majority of the all-star team. When you watch the NHL, it's become a much more global sport, of course, but pretty clear to say that Canada has the best players in the world. And on this team, this is one of the best teams they've ever put together. And they've been dominant for a long time. And when you are going up against an incumbent, no matter whatever business you're in, if you are up against a much larger, much stronger, much more powerful incumbent, the last thing you should do is play their game. So the Canadians, beautiful skill, unbelievable hands, great passers, fast. They've got Connor McDavid, who may be the most skilled and talented athlete to ever play hockey, right up there with Wayne Gretzky. And you think about wars throughout the years. You think about the Revolutionary War, the Americans. Americans didn't line up in lines and fire muskets at the British. That was their strength. They were coming flying. We were a bunch of hunters. We were climbing trees and shit, picking guys off. Guerrilla warfare, right? And I talked about this a few weeks ago, the Peloponnesian War between Sparta and Athens. Well, Spartan won that, and Sparta became the dominant power for decades. They were like the standard Rockefeller Standard Oil of countries. They dominated the Greek peninsula, and no one really wanted to mess with that military power. But they were kind of a brutal ruler. Like not everyone was into the Spartan way of life, and it took a country by the name of Thebes to stand up to them. So do you know the story about Thebes and Sparta?
Not as well as I know the U.S. vocabulary.
Okay, that's great. Let me tell you about the precedent of Sparta and Thebes. So Thebes, the way Thebes went about attacking the Spartans had the legendary phalanx, right? They fought in a big rectangle and they would get real tight with their shields and their spears. Thebes didn't play that game. They knew they couldn't beat the Spartans at that game. They were too powerful. They were too good at the phalanx. So instead, what they would do is they would kind of create this wedge, and they would run overwhelming force to try to break the line and get in between the line to try to throw them off their game. So instead of just lining up and going phalanx to phalanx, Thebes didn't have a big enough military where they could do that. They would try to go totally opposite and attack differently. So how does that relate to what we did with USA Hockey? Well, there was a lot of controversy when the team was picked. There were some very good all-stars in the NHL that were American that were left off of the American team. And the reason, and I'll get into this in a second, but the reason for it is the Olympic rink is slightly smaller than an NHL rink. And you don't need to be, like, if you've ever seen an NHL rink, they're not that large. They're not like soccer fields. They're not football fields. They're relatively small. So even shrinking it a little bit, you're going to have a lot tighter game played.
Is it shorter because it's more expensive if it's longer?
So a tighter rink means that you're going to have a more physical game. You're not going to have as much wide open skating, where skill still, I don't want to say skill doesn't play a part, but it plays less of a part when you have a tighter confines. And the USA coach knew that even if he put the most skilled American NHL players on a team and tried to win skill to skill, you'd be playing into Canada's hands. If you just went our best skill against yours, they would still have 8 of the 10 best players on the ice. So his decision was, we're not going to play their game. We're not going to play a wide open skilled game. We're going to muddy it up. We've got some really physical kids, with the Kachucks being 2 of the best at really getting into your head and playing a different game. And we're going to lean into that. So one of his first precedents of selecting the team, if you can't check, you can't be on our team. And when a check in hockey means rough it up, physical. Check is just a body blow, a hit. So we're going to get rugged. I want the best players, but they have to be ones that are willing and physical and ready to get into the corner and muddy it up, because our game is going to be very different than Canada's. We are going to hit them from the start until the end. We're going to play great defense. We're going to play in slow. It'd be like if it was a football game. We're going to run the ball and try to take the air out of the clock, slow it down, play a defensive game, and try to win 14-10. That's the kind of game USA wanted to go. So from a kind of like Thebes, we're not going to line up phalanx to phalanx against you, or the Americans against the British going guerrilla warfare. We're going to just play a different game than you, and our game is not going to play into your strength. So number one, from a team selection perspective, we picked up guys that were willing to goon it up, that were gritty, that were tough, and that were going to get under your skin of all the superstars of the Canadian team.
So what happened in the game, if you were watching it, is in the second period, the USA had a double minor, which means that we basically lost 2 skaters. So it was 5 skaters against 3 skaters. And the US was playing kind of neck and neck with Canada, and we're ahead for part of the game. And then during this period of time, what happened was they just got gassed. And it was 5 skaters against 3, so it was a huge advantage for about 90 seconds. But nobody from Canada scored during those 90 seconds because the U.S. went 18 for 18 in penalty kills. And what that means is during power play kills. During the entire Olympics, there was 18 instances when the U.S. had a skater or more less than the opposition. And that's a great period of time for people to go out and score and win. So the U.S. killed 18 penalties in the Olympics, which is amazing. Now, there was a subsequent goal after that got us into overtime, but that is huge. And it happened for 2 reasons. It was construction, roster construction. Jimmy Roberts is the guy who plays for the North Stars that I saw play that I thought was awesome. He was left off. He's one of the best goal scorers in the U.S. because they have so many goal scorers, but he doesn't hit the way Ian talked about. And he's not somebody who they can say, go out on the ice and kill this power play. And that's what the U.S. needed for their roster. And 18 for 18, Ian, that's insanely great odd, right? Like, amazing.
It's unbelievable. If you haven't played hockey, being on the ice as one of the 3 on a 5-on-3, and especially a 5-on-3 when there's guys like Connor McDavid on the other side, it's one of the most tiring. It's one of the most tiring things. The closest thing I could go put a treadmill on a 15 incline and run as fast as you can for 2 minutes and see how you feel at the end of it. Your lungs are dying. You're skating backwards, forward. You're diving. It's like trying to kill a penalty. And it's really interesting. I'm glad you brought this up on the penalty kill. So 2 of the best players on the Detroit Red Wings are Americans. One of them is Dylan Larkin, and the other one is Alex DeBrincat. DeBrincat is all skill. He's really good goal scorer. See, like if you just go look at his points at the end of the year, he outpoints Dylan Larkin. He always outscores him. But Dylan Larkin is our captain. And there's a number of captains of NHL teams on this American team. And the reason why Dylan Larkin is the Red Wings captain, if you watch the game, he impacts the game on both sides of the ice. He's a center. He scores. He passes. He's awesome defensively. So the 5-on-3 you're talking about, Dylan Larkin was on the ice for the majority of that, and he made a couple of awesome plays during it. He was also on the ice when they went 3-on-3 in the overtime. So some of the way we constructed not just on specialists that could score goals, but we picked guys that could play heavy minutes, that had tons of lung capacity. That 5-on-3 was a big deal. The guys we had on the ice were those kind of like grinder, gritty guys. You're not looking to score. You're just looking to not let them score. And that was a big part of our strategy. Connor McDavid's line was so good that whenever they were on the ice, we would put our grind line out there. And that grind line's whole job was just don't let their shift score.
Basically, put them on quicksand. Don't
Neutral.
let them have space.
Just neutrality. Just
That's
if
right.
you can go 0-0 with that, we keep them from scoring. We're going to try to win with one of our other lines. We're going to try to win when someone else is out. But when they're on the ice, just don't let them score. Grind it up, be tough, and figure it out. And that's the Red Wings fans know those two players really well, and I love both of them. They're both really good, but one of them fit what Team USA was, and that was Dylan Larkin, that grinder, captain, leadership mentality. DeBrincat didn't exactly fit what they were looking for.
So in 1980, we won. In 2010, we came in second, and it was Sidney Crosby scored what's called the golden goal. And in 2026, we won gold. So those 3 times, right? During those 3 specific events, we had Jim Craig, Ryan Miller, and a guy named Connor Hellenbach. Hellenbach had 41 saves during this Olympics. So if you put that in perspective, the U.S. goalie had 41 out of 42 saves. If you just did math, if there was 42 shots on goal against it, if he had the same save percentage as the Canadian goalie, we would have lost 4-1. So he just played like insanely good hockey. And when we usually win, we have incredible goaltending, and that's what happened with Jim Craig in 80. And we almost won in 2010 with incredible goaltending. But the reason that this is something I think is really relevant is in America, we grew up playing sports with our hands. Most of the world, they use their feet. I was in Australia 20 years ago, and my sister and I were throwing a football just in the backyard, and a kid came over and he couldn't throw because he kicks the ball or underhand throws it because he plays rugby and he plays soccer. He didn't play football. He'd never seen American football before. If you look at it from this perspective, in world soccer, we usually get our ass kicked. And the best players in the U.S. are one of 2 types of people: goaltenders or defensemen. We don't have the skill. Just like if you compare us to Canada with hockey, we don't have the skill. The people who've made it to the English Premier League, which is the best league in the world for soccer, have been goalies and defensemen. Now we're finally getting to a point where some of our players are moving their way over. We're going to have World Cup this year, and we have a really good scorer, Christian Pulisic. But by and large, for 50 years, the only people from America that made it onto the big stage were people who muddied up the game, similar to hockey, or were great with their hands. We've always had, for the last 30, 40 years, have always had one of the best goaltenders in the world, in the U.S., because of that. So it's similar here with hockey. Our goalie is incredible. And if it wasn't for him, we would have gotten our asses kicked.
Is it true that your career at MVR ended because you were a little known by being a little too good with your hands with some of the sales reps?
No. Don't you even dare go there.
I
My
just
lack
made
of
that up.
current
You
event
thought that
knowledge
was
with
funny.
Epstein Island does not mean I was also a scumbag. F you. F
Uh,
you, Ian.
Totally made up. So at the end of the game, I sent this video over to Frankie. The coach had an awesome line, Mike Sullivan. They were asking him about the makeup of the team, and he said, "There's in life. There are whiskey drinkers and milk drinkers, and this roster's made up of a lot of whiskey drinkers," which I just liked. We took guys with edge, with serious personality, and even the stars like Austin Matthews and Jack Hughes were asked to check. If you looked at Austin Matthews, he was one of the guys on the ice. Austin Matthews, just so you know, over the last 6 years is the leading goal scorer in the entire NHL. Most goals scored by any NHL player, even more than Connor McDavid. He is a really skilled, but he's a big guy. He's a strong guy, and he's a great skater. He didn't score a lot in this because the coach asked him, "I need you to be a two-way player. You got to play 200-foot hockey. You're going to play." So what I love about this team is the stars were doing it both ways. Jack Hughes, before he scored the game-winning goal in that game, got 3 of his teeth knocked out playing 200-foot hockey all the way down the ice, drew a huge penalty, which led to us even getting to overtime, which was a big shot. But Jack Hughes is in the NHL. He's a goal scorer. He's not known for being like a gritty guy in the corners. He was playing a different level of hockey because the coach asked him to.
So the biggest lessons in my life I've learned from my family and from sports. And if sports is done properly, it becomes a family. I'm very fortunate because of just luck. I ended up at a high school where we had no senior class. So we got our asses kicked for several years in a row playing varsity football. And we had no business doing it. Our high school football coach literally said in the paper, most of the kids that start in this roster should be playing on Wednesday afternoons, which means playing JV.
Yes.
We had no business. That's exactly what he said. But
Awesome.
almost 40 years later, we're all still tight. We all still get together because we had this crucible that brought us together. And we had struggle. We eventually had wins, but we went 0-10 my sophomore year, got our asses kicked. 3.5, 4 decades later, it was a bond that you cannot change or sacrifice or weaken because we had this thing that brought us together. So tell us who Johnny Hockey is. Tell us what the story is about him and what happened to him.
Super sad story. Happened a couple of years ago. Johnny Gaudreau, just one of the most popular guys in the NHL. He was an all-star. He's an American. I think it was the day his sister was getting married. He was out.
I know more details about this. So he and his brother were getting in a training bike ride because in the middle of the summer, like middle of summer, somewhere in the Northeast, there's not a lot of ice. So they were on bicycles getting in a bike ride. And the two of them, him and his brother, were both wiped out on bicycles. I've been hit by a car while biking. Fucking hurts. They got hit by a car. They both got killed, and it was a drunk driver on the weekend leading up to their sister's wedding.
Yeah. So just really sad. It was a kind of heartbreaking moment in the NHL, but they had purpose. They had a reason. It again, most wars in history. I just brought up the Americans versus the British. You're fighting for something. If we lose, they're going to hang all of us. If you most of the time when the incumbent loses, it's because they don't have as much skin in the game. And these Americans, you could tell, were really playing for the memory of Gaudreau. At the end of it, when they won it, it was cool. They brought his kids out onto the ice. They did a lot to honor him throughout this whole thing. So they were playing for something. In addition, they take a lot of pride in America, but they were playing for something else. I think also you brought up the brother thing. I don't think that's a small thing. So there are two sets of brothers on this American
Let
team.
me get into Gaudreau before you get into the brothers. Ian kind of talked about it. Gaudreau, if you don't follow the hockey, you didn't see much of it. It was number 13. And their parents kind of avoided, number 13's parents kind of avoided the whole Olympic thing. But many of the players encouraged them to come to the gold medal game, and they flew to Italy. I don't know their financial situation or whatever, but they literally got on a plane and came there because it was so important to some of the players that we need to have you at this game. And they were there, which is amazing. Like, I can't imagine losing a child. Is there anything worse? But they literally went there. I'm sure it was hard as hell on them, but they were there. The family was there. The wife was there and the kids. And when this game ended, the first thing they did after they celebrated is they went and got his jersey, and 3 of them held the jersey and skated around the rink multiple times. Like, everybody's in the euphoria, which was amazing, but that was really, really cool. And then 2 of the guys ran off the ice, got the children of number 13, and in the official team photo, those kids are in the photo. So like nowadays we talk about role models and all the BS in society. Like, you can't replace someone's dad, but look at all the men who stepped up to say these kids are not going to be forgotten. There's not a dry eye in the house watching it because it was so incredibly important.
Yeah, so that kind of foxhole mentality that this American team had, that when I bring up Austin Matthews, one of the biggest goal scorers in the league, playing defensive hockey for the Olympics, the way you get people to do that is not from compliance. It's not from the whip. It's because they're playing for something bigger. And when you have things like that, you have that kind of North Star of like, what would Johnny do? What would Gaudreau do if he were here? Because he was kind of one of those gritty dudes that everyone liked, and also playing for your country. And you do other things. You do things that are slightly different, right? So getting to the brother thing, the Kachucks are 2 of my favorite players in the league. They're awesome. When we played Canada a year ago in the international competition, these are the guys that started fights before we even dropped a puck. I think there were like 3 fights in the first 13 seconds of that game. It was awesome. But that was also, that grit was kind of like, we're not scared of you anymore, Canada. We're here, we're showing up, we're ready to rock and roll. And it was an incredible game. And that kind of led to some more of this. But the idea of having brothers on a team is fascinating to me. That not only are they both skilled, I mean, Quinn and Jack Hughes scored the game-winning goals in overtime in the quarterfinals and the finals. But there's something else along these lines. So I brought up the war, the Thebes-Sparta war earlier, and there's something else about that war. The Spartans are known for the 300 that stood up to the Persians, but Thebes also created this elite fighting unit of 300. But what was interesting about this 300 key is it was 150 pairs of gay lovers. True story. They turned them into like one of the most elite fighting units in the world. They created their own 300. And the reason why they did this is because they had this concept of if you won't fight for your lover, who will you fight for? And this 300 became a big part of like that tip of the spear. And there were all kinds of crazy stories about them staying and fighting until the end because they weren't going to. And then when they would lose their lover, they had nothing else to fight for. So I'm going to just fight until I die. And there's some of that like band of brotherhood that when you have a couple of these, and these 300 fought with the rest of the military for Thebes, the rest of the military that went after Sparta. It's kind of the same thing when you have brothers that are out there kind of going after it. And I don't know if you saw the first shift of this game when the Kachucks took a run at McDavid and blasted him into the boards together. It was like a really cool scene. It just gets everyone else playing like brothers.
I can't wait till the first trans 300 comes out. What will that be with the Peloponnesian War? It's the bearded lady.
Is that how you just manufacture your own 300? You just kind of fake it?
So I'm going to go into something else that I think is really cool. In today's society, the way that I feel about it is we don't have a common enemy right now. We just don't. Life is actually pretty good, but people don't realize it because perspective has been lost. And there's a lot of infighting. There just is. We haven't had a war, major war like World War II in 85 years. 2-3 generations have gone by of people who just don't understand what struggle really is.
Yeah.
So we just don't. So nowadays people kind of apologize for us as a country. And again, I led the article that I wrote with We're Not Perfect and Nobody Is. I feel a little bit more cautious and pounding my chest as being an American than I think Ian does. But this is really cool. Greatness at anything requires time and dedication. I'm listening to a podcast with Alex Honnold, who's the guy who was the free solo guy who climbed the building. And between the year 18 and 30, he lived in a van by himself. And he was broke and nobody had ever heard of him. He literally lived on $300 a month and he just honed his craft. And he eventually became someone who was very rich and world famous because it found him. But no matter what it is you set your mind towards, if it means something to you, set your mind towards it and lean into it. My wife and I will get in arguments over, like, is her job valuable? It's valuable to her. It doesn't make any sense to me. And she thinks the same way about me. But we're both really good at what we do because we believe in it. So if you have chosen ice hockey as your pursuit, it's really hard to get to this level. And when you get to this level, the thing that I thought was the coolest was we are imperfect, but when Jack Hughes got up there, missing something between 3 and 5 teeth, just snaggle-faced, he was unapologetic about how incredible it was to win for the country. I love the country. I'm so excited we got to win for the country. And when they asked a question about the goalie, he said that guy was the best player we had. Everything he talked about was amazing. Like, he left out the hard work it took to get there, but it was something that was so incredibly prideful and maybe misguided. That could be your opinion. Okay, but this person leaned into this and has given their entire life for something and wanted to put on the red, white, and blue. If you get hurt playing in the hockey in this tournament, you could lose money in the NHL. That's a real thing. The best player for Canada is Sidney Crosby. He's going to be out for a month because he got hurt playing in the Olympics. Like, there is sacrifice that goes into this, but it was really cool to just see the purity of everything that went into this, the family, the team, the workmanship, how they didn't forget about a teammate. And in the end, what do you think about this win? It's all about America. I love our country. I did not like Sammy Sosa when he was coming up. It turned out he was tainted. He was taking steroids. But someone I respect loved him. And I said, how could you love this guy? He goes, Frankie, I love him because every word out of his mouth is, I love this country. I love America. And we lose sight of that sometimes. And it was such a cool reminder to watch these kids win and just celebrate who we are. And I loved it.
Hey, none of this we shit lose sight of this. You're not going to hear me say anything's misguided about loving America. It's the best country in the goddamn world. It's not even close. There's nowhere else I'd rather live. So, and we have the best system of government. And if the current government you're not happy with, it's like the weather. Wait a while, we'll replace it because the people are going to speak up and they're going to do whatever they want. So I've been unhappy with a few administrations and they ultimately get replaced because they don't do their job. So it's resonated with me when Jack Hughes said all those things. I'll just kind of leave it with this too, wrapping up my my Thebes and Sparta thing. Sparta was thought of as invincible for about 60 years after the Persian thing happened, after the Peloponnesian Wars. And it took Thebes going in and winning that battle. And when they did win that battle, the mystique went away. There was something, and Canada's got a bit of that mystique. Russia had that mystique until we knocked them off. And then all of a sudden, people started taking
Chicken in
runs.
the armor. People saw it. These guys are beatable.
It happened to America, right? That Redeem team had to come in and remind everyone. But that team that had AI on it, that American basketball team, when they lost, the rest of the world was like, oh shit, they're vulnerable. We can go in and get it. And I think this could be the start of something in our country where more and more kids are playing hockey and more into it. And we don't see Canada as unbeatable. I can tell you, as a kid in Michigan, we were always a little intimidated by going over to Canada or playing a Canadian team. They just had like a aura about them, a little shine about them, that's their sport and we're just trying to keep it close. These kind of things, like from the time Thebes beat them in that one battle, it was like 5 years later and Sparta was like done. Like the empire completely collapsed because people realized, oh shit, they're beatable. All this aura about them is not true.
Ian and I were talking about this. I did not watch the State of the Union, which was last night. But what I love is that last night at the State of the Union, the hockey team, the men's and the women's were both invited. The men went, the women didn't. And both Republicans, of course, and Democrats stood up and clapped. And it's the thing that I love about sports. It's pure. There's a very famous football coach named Bill Curry, and he literally said, race, economics, everything go out the door when it comes to sports. If you are next to someone that you would diametrically hate out in the real world and your success depends upon them, you become brothers. And it is the thing I adore about sports. My wife didn't grow up playing sports, but I think it's so important for boys and so important today to do it. Like, I'm coaching 2 baseball teams. Ian's been huge in the youth sports. His kids are older than mine. But it's a great place where everything is neutralized and it just comes down to something real simple. And it's something to get behind and believe in and to just unify. And it was a really cool thing to watch.
I'll just wrap this up for, if you're in a business, if you're a manager, when you're up against an incumbent, don't play their game. Don't try to match might for might. If they are bigger, better, stronger, more established than you, come at them from the sides. Do not go head to head. Be creative and chip away from angles. You're about to say something, Frankie?
Yeah, I'm going to close with this. So if you listen to Ray Dalio right now, he's talking about how the sky is falling, right? There's a changing world order. There's everything else. One of the things I'm excited about with this administration is they went outside of the traditional Republican realm and they reached into some really smart people from Silicon Valley. Like Silicon Valley or dislike them, there's smart people there. And Silicon Valley often figures out ways to do things with smaller budgets and with it's counterintuitive because they're not the incumbents, they're small. So
yeah.
100%. So if you look at what a small business can do, a small business can be incredibly impactful with less overhead, with less numbers of people, using different things. Disruption happens with looking at things that are normal and saying what goes against the norm and allows me to have an incredible advantage. Last week, we talked about how you can find a way to kind of penetrate the corporate veil and to stand out inside of your career, thinking of things that allow you to stand out and do things that are more economical, more impactful, drive revenue up and cost down. That's how that thinking happens.
The last thing I'll sum up on is a lot of the people who listen to us, Frankie, are from similar backgrounds. They work in real estate, they work in home building, they work in finance. This market has been shitty for 2 years, period. It is a buyer's market. It is not a seller's market. If you are a hiring manager, select for grit. In tough markets, not a time for prima donnas that are just goal scorers when the wind is at their back. You need 200-foot players that will play offense, defense, be good teammates, will roll their sleeves up, will stop if they see a piece of trash in their community and pick it up, will do the extra things. Grit will get you a long way when you have a headwind that you are up against, and that's where we're at right now. And so just like the Americans knew going in that we need a gritty team if we're going to win our style of game, it's going to have to be an ugly game. You have to select for people that are willing to put their ego aside and do lots of little things and are willing to grind and put their ego away. That's the way you win in a market like this.
So I'll use a different example. I'm glad you went into this. So I've had 3 different department heads in my construction department over the last 2 years. I had someone who was a maverick. I had someone who was kind of bookish, and now I have another maverick. But this maverick is somebody who is, he had military training. He's big into sports, so he understands like chain of command. But with 3 different people leading that department, they have 3 different sets of needs, those wants theirs. And I let each one of them, maybe at my detriment, help build a team around their strengths and weaknesses. So if you are actually running a department, you have to think of, well, can I get out of this person what I need? You have to have a big picture. And as someone who may be a senior level manager or an owner like I am, you have to think, can I empower the people inside of this department to pick people that have strengths and weaknesses that work along with theirs? So it all comes back to roster construction, is I think what Ian's talking about. One of the things we both thought really was fascinating about this team. And you never know. If the roster construction is wrong, you don't get a medal in the Olympics. In business, you get to change. This person's the wrong fit for us. So you can manipulate through hiring, through firing, through training. There's different ways that you can go through and you can build a team that you need to succeed.
Well, for a Florida boy in this hockey talk today. We'll get back to talking about SEC football next
My
week.
4-year-old kept going, is this hard? And I said, yeah, the last time we went to a rink, Daddy had to use like a little cane type of a thing to skate. Because I don't know how to skate.
They had you pushing a chair. You were pushing a chair along the ice like the other. That's beautiful. That's fantastic.
See you, buddy.
Daddy's better at pushing around defensive tackles.
And eating cheese.
Yes. See you, Frankie.